Clayton thought he was stepping into a new life, far away from the chaos of the world he left behind. A ranch, all his own, with wide-open skies and the promise of peace. But nothing prepared him for Jolene, a 600-pound force of nature standing in his cabin doorway, throwing down an unexpected challenge. "You're skinny enough to find it?" she said, her eyes glinting with mystery. What was this land hiding? And what did she mean by that cryptic warning? Clayton had no idea, but he was about to find out. Before we dive into this wild journey, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love stories full of unexpected twists, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode will leave you breathless. Clayton Reeves had arrived with nothing but hope and a truck full of dreams. The kind of dreams that stretched out as far as the dry horizon in front of him. He'd envisioned wide open spaces, the hum of wind through the grass, and the kind of solitude that would wash away the bitterness of city life. The kind of place where the past couldn't follow him. The land was supposed to be a blank canvas, untouched, unspoiled, and full of potential. The property was everything he could have asked for. Vast, desolate, and quiet. The low, rolling hills stretched far and wide, punctuated only by the silhouette of a dilapidated barn in the distance. This was it. This was the life he'd worked for, the life he'd longed for. But as the engine of his truck sputtered to a stop in the dirt driveway, the silence that greeted him was anything but peaceful. A figure stood on the porch of the small cabin ahead, silhouetted by the sunday. She was tall, her frame commanding attention as she stood with arms crossed over her chest. Clayton squinted into the glare, trying to make out the details. Her posture was defiant, like someone who'd been in charge of this place long before he ever stepped foot on it. She wore a yellow blouse, the fabric billowing around her massive arms, and a deep blue skirt that trailed behind her like a cape. Her boots, worn and sturdy, kicked up dust with each step she took. But it was her eyes that caught Clayton off guard, sharp, calculating, and piercing, as though she could see right through him. "You must be the new owner," she said, her voice low but commanding. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, and it carried the weight of someone who had no patience for small talk. Her gaze never left him as she took a step forward, the air around her thick with something he couldn't quite place. Clayton cleared his throat. "Yeah, I'm Clayton Reeves. The new owner," he said, trying to sound confident, but he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Something about her presence was unsettling, almost as if she owned more than just the land. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "That's so?" Her eyes scanned him up and down. "You're skinny enough to find it." "Find what?" Clayton asked, confusion curling in his stomach. Her lips curled into a slow, knowing smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Find out what you're really dealing with here. The land, and me." Before he could respond, she turned on her heel and started walking back toward the cabin. Her heavy steps echoed in the stillness of the yard. Clayton stood rooted to the spot, his thoughts spinning. What the hell did she mean by that? And why did he feel like he'd just stepped into something much bigger than he could handle? The wind swept through the open field, kicking up a cloud of dust that swirled around him, almost like it was waiting for him to make his move. He glanced at the cabin, the air thick with unspoken challenges. The place was his now. Or was it? Shaking his head, Clayton made his way toward the cabin. But as his boots crunched on the dry earth, the gnawing feeling in his gut told him one thing. This place wasn't just going to be his home. It was going to be a test. And Jolene, the woman who had greeted him like a storm, was about to make sure he knew it. The cabin creaked as Clayton stepped inside, the smell of old wood and dust hanging thick in the air. It was small, rustic, but it had potential much like the ranch itself. He set down his bag and surveyed the room, trying to settle into the stillness that surrounded him. But his thoughts kept circling back to the woman on the porch, Jolene. His mind kept replaying her words. "You're skinny enough to find it." What did she mean? And why did she seem so certain that he'd have to find something in the first place? A sharp knock on the door interrupted his musings. Clayton glanced toward the sound, a feeling of unease creeping up on him again. Was she back? Before he could answer, the door swung open, revealing Jolene standing in the doorway. Her expression was unreadable, but the fire in her eyes made it clear she wasn't here for small talk. "You're going to work," she stated flatly. "You're not here for vacation. You might have bought the place, but I don't answer to you." She stepped into the cabin without waiting for an invitation, her boots making a heavy thud against the wooden floor. Clayton raised an eyebrow, a mix of confusion and irritation crossing his face. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Jolene said. her voice low but cutting through the air with the same authority she had when he first saw her. "I don't care if you paid for the deed. I've been here. I've kept this place running. And you need to prove you can do the same." Clayton felt his chest tighten as she continued to loom over him, her sheer size and presence filling up the small cabin. He had no idea how to respond. Was she threatening him, testing him, or just trying to drive him away? "Prove it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "What exactly do you want me to prove?" "Everything," she said with a smirk, leaning against the doorframe. "Your strength, your ability, your grit." She took a step forward, close enough now that Clayton could feel the weight of her words. "I'm going to make you work. If you think you can just sit around and let this place take care of itself, you're wrong. It's going to take everything you've got and then some." Clayton swallowed hard, his mind racing. He didn't want to back down. He wasn't the type to just roll over. But this woman, she was different. This wasn't some easygoing farm life. This was going to be a test of everything he had. Jolene wasn't done. "First things first, you'll fix the fence by the south field. It's broken, and it needs to be repaired before nightfall. You think you can handle that, or do I need to hold your hand?" Clayton clenched his jaw, his pride flaring. "I'll fix it." She nodded, that same calculating look in her eyes. "We'll see. I'm not here to hold your hand. You need to prove you belong. If you don't, the land won't give you anything, not a damn thing." With that, she turned and strode out of the cabin, leaving Clayton standing there, his heart pounding in his chest. What had he gotten himself into? He grabbed his gloves, a sudden surge of determination pushing him forward. He wasn't going to back down. He'd fix the fence. And then, maybe, he'd understand exactly what he was supposed to find here. Clayton worked well into the afternoon, the sun beating down on him as he hammered away at the fence post. Sweat dripped from his brow, mixing with the dust in the air, but he kept at it. Jolene's words echoed in his mind. Prove it. He wasn't going to let her think he couldn't handle the ranch. But as he worked, his thoughts kept wandering back to her, to that cryptic warning she'd given him. Find it. What was it? What was he supposed to uncover? The fence was finally repaired, the last post driven into the earth with a satisfying thud. Clayton wiped his hands on his pants and stood back to survey his work. His body ached, but there was a sense of accomplishment there, even if it was just one small part of the bigger picture. But then something caught his eye. Near the edge of the south field, a small stack of old wooden crates was partially hidden behind a large rock formation. Clayton hadn't seen them when he arrived. In fact, they looked like they'd been there for years, left forgotten in the shadows. His curiosity piqued. He walked over and pried one of the crates open, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, he found a collection of worn journals. The leather covers were cracked with age, but the pages inside were surprisingly well preserved. Clayton flipped through the first one, scanning the yellowed pages filled with scribbled notes. The handwriting was rough but legible. The journals didn't seem to be from anyone who had worked the land recently. No, these belonged to someone else entirely. Someone who had known the land long before he had come here. Well, well, Clayton muttered to himself, his fingers tracing the pages. One name kept appearing. Marcus Vance. It was scattered through the journals like a signature, mentioned in contexts that seemed far too personal to be about land management. Marcus had written about plans, about partnerships, and something deeper, something Clayton couldn't quite grasp. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke through the silence, and Clayton turned to see Jolene approaching. She had a determined look on her face, and Clayton felt a surge of nervousness. Was she going to stop him from reading? But she didn't. She stopped a few feet away, her gaze flicking toward the crate, then back to him. Found something, did you? She asked, her voice steady but with an edge that made it clear she knew exactly what he was holding. Clayton hesitated before responding. Who was Marcus Vance? Jolene's expression didn't change, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, maybe even wariness. She crossed her arms, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Marcus Vance was the man who sold you this place. Or should I say, the man who tried to sell you a lie. Clayton stood up, his hands still gripping the journal. What do you mean? He sold me the land in good faith. I've got the deed. Jolene took a deep breath, as if she were gathering her thoughts. Marcus made promises. Promises that weren't his to make. He led us all to believe we'd be partners in more ways than one. Her voice softened, the weight of her words heavier now. I've been here longer than you know. Before the land was even yours, I was part of the deal. The promises, the land. It all tied back to Marcus. Clayton's confusion deepened. What kind of promises? Jolene glanced over at the journals, her gaze lingering for a moment. Then she met his eyes, her expression now unreadable. Those journals you found? They're the key. Marcus promised me and the others who worked here that we'd share everything. The land, the work, even the rewards. Clayton stood frozen, trying to process the implications. What was she saying? That there was more to this ranch than just a piece of paper? More than just property? Jolene stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. This place isn't just land, Clayton. It's part of something bigger, something Marcus used to control. Her voice dropped to a whisper, almost conspiratorial. If you want to know the truth about what you've stepped into, you'll have to look beyond the deeds and the fences. You'll have to understand what Marcus left behind, and why it matters. For the first time since he arrived, Clayton felt the unease settle deep in his gut. What had he really bought? And why was Jolene still here, guarding secrets that stretched far beyond the land? He glanced down at the journals, the weight of the past pressing heavily in his chest. He hadn't just inherited a piece of land. He had inherited a mystery, one that Jolene seemed determined to keep hidden. As the wind picked up, swirling dust around them, Clayton realized one thing. He wasn't just here to fix a fence or plant crops. He was here to uncover a past that had been buried long before he ever arrived. And Jolene? She was right in the middle of it. The evening sun dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the ranch. Clayton sat on the porch of the cabin, staring at the sprawling land before him. The work from the day had worn him out, but his mind raced with questions. Jolene's words haunted him. Something bigger. What had Marcus Vance promised? And why was she still here, guarding these secrets? Jolene hadn't said much more after her cryptic words, and for a while, Clayton had wondered if he'd imagined the entire conversation. But as the night deepened, he could feel the weight of it all pressing in. He was no longer just a rancher. He was a man tangled in something much deeper than he had ever imagined. Footsteps on the porch broke his train of thought. Jolene stood before him, her large frame filling the doorway like a storm on the horizon. Her face was unreadable, but Clayton could see the tension in her shoulders, the faint tightening around her eyes. "I suppose you've been thinking about what I said," she remarked, her voice calm but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Clayton didn't know how to respond. He wanted answers, but part of him feared what the truth might reveal. "I don't understand," he said finally, his voice rough with confusion. "Why are you still here? If Marcus made all these promises, why haven't you left?" Jolene's lips twitched into a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She took a seat beside him on the porch, her weight making the old wood creak beneath her. "Because, Clayton," she said, her tone low, almost melancholy, "this land isn't just about what's written on paper. It's about something deeper, something that binds us to it." Clayton glanced at her, confused. "What do you mean? I bought the land fair and square. There's nothing binding me here except my choice." She turned her gaze toward the land, her eyes softening for a moment before hardening again. "You don't get it, do you? The land. It's not just land. It's part of a promise, a bond." She sighed deeply, her voice thick with a history that Clayton didn't yet understand. Marcus was just a part of it. He came here, made promises he couldn't keep, and left us with more than just debts. He left us with expectations. And now you've inherited all of it. Clayton felt his chest tighten. "I'm just trying to make a living here. I don't need any expectations hanging over me." Jolene looked at him, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of her lips. "Expectations are a funny thing. Sometimes, they're all you've got." Her gaze softened, a brief flicker of something vulnerable crossing her face. "You think you're here to work the land, but really, you're here to find something, to take your place in something much bigger than you know. And that, well, that's the real test." Clayton's head spun with the weight of her words. "And what happens if I don't pass the test?" Jolene's expression hardened again. "You'll never truly own this place. Not in the way you think." The tension between them hung thick in the air. For a long moment, neither spoke. Clayton wasn't sure if he was scared, intrigued, or both. Jolene's presence was powerful, undeniable. But there was something more, something he couldn't quite grasp, something she was holding back. Finally, she stood, her gaze lingering on him. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we work again. I'll show you what Marcus left behind, if you're ready to see it." As she walked away, Clayton sat there for a moment longer, the weight of her words pressing down on him. There was something more to this place. Something hidden. Something he wasn't sure he was ready to find. But as the night deepened and the wind howled across the land, Clayton knew one thing for certain. Whatever he had come here for, it wasn't just a fresh start. It was something far more complicated. And Jolene was at the heart of it all. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale, eerie glow over the ranch. Clayton had spent the entire day working in the fields, trying to shake off the unease that had settled deep in his bones. He had done everything Jolene asked of him, more than he had ever done in a single day, and yet the questions kept swirling in his mind, unanswered. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, not just by Jolene, but by the land itself, the way it seemed to whisper to him in the wind, the way the earth beneath his feet felt like it had stories to tell. It was as if the ranch had a pulse, a life of its own, and Clayton was just the latest person to wander into its orbit. As the night grew darker, Clayton sat on the porch, his body sore from the day's labor. The wind had picked up, swirling dust and leaves around him. He stared out across the vast expanse of land, trying to quiet his mind. But then he heard footsteps approaching. Turning, he saw Jolene walking toward him, her silhouette framed by the moonlight. She was wearing a long coat now, her heavy boots crunching against the dirt. Her face was shadowed, but her eyes gleamed with an intensity that sent a chill down Clayton's spine. "You're still here," Clayton said, standing up, unsure whether to be relieved or nervous. Jolene didn't answer immediately. She stood just a few feet from him, her gaze intense and unwavering. The air between them felt thick, charged with an unspoken tension that Clayton couldn't ignore. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jolene took a step closer. "You've been avoiding me." Clayton's heart skipped a beat. "I'm not avoiding you," he said quickly, though the words felt hollow. He couldn't deny the way her presence made him feel unsettled, as if there was something she was keeping from him, something just out of reach. She took another step forward, closing the distance between them. "You don't understand what's at stake here," she said quietly, her voice low but heavy with meaning. "This land is more than just a place. It's part of something. Something I've spent my life protecting." Clayton swallowed hard, his chest tightening. "What are you saying? What is it that I need to understand?" Jolene's gaze softened, but her intensity never wavered. "You think this is just about work, just about fixing fences and planting crops. But it's not. It's about survival and trust." She paused, letting the silence hang between them. Clayton felt his pulse quicken. There was something about the way she looked at him, something raw in her eyes, that made him want to step back and run. But he couldn't. Not now. "I came here because I thought I could escape," Clayton said, his voice quieter than he intended. "But you keep pulling me back into this, into something I don't understand." Jolene reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. "You're not running, Clayton," she said softly. "You're not here to escape. You're here to face it." Her touch lingered for a moment, and Clayton felt a strange tension coil in his chest. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She was pulling him in, deeper into something he wasn't prepared for, something bigger than both of them. "I don't know what you want from me," Clayton admitted, his voice low, barely a whisper in the wind. Jolene stepped back, her expression unreadable now. "I want you to understand, Clayton. This place, it has a way of choosing its own, and it chose you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Clayton opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His mind was spinning. What did she mean by that? And why did it feel like his life was about to change in a way he couldn't control? Jolene turned and began to walk back toward the cabin. "You'll see. Soon enough, you'll understand exactly what this place wants from you." Clayton watched her disappear into the darkness, her figure blending with the night. The ranch seemed to stretch out endlessly in front of him, its secrets still waiting to be uncovered. And deep down, Clayton knew that no matter how much he wanted to run, he was already too far in. There was no turning back now. The next few days passed in a blur of hard work. Clayton threw himself into the tasks Jolene set before him, fixing fences, mending tools, and tending to the fields. Each day was an exhausting test of his endurance, both physical and mental. Jolene's presence was a constant. She was always there, watching him, offering guidance, and pushing him to his limits. At times, Clayton felt as though he were walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and it felt like he might lose his footing. But each day he made it through, his confidence grew. The ranch was taking shape under his hands, and the satisfaction of seeing things improve made the grueling labor almost bearable. But it wasn't just the land that was shifting. Slowly, like the erosion of rock beneath the wind, something else was changing. The tension between him and Jolene had started to soften. She was still as intimidating as ever, but there was a quiet understanding beginning to take root between them. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat on the porch together, the sun dipping below the horizon and casting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Jolene had been quiet for most of the day, and Clayton hadn't dared ask her too many questions. But tonight felt different. There was a strange calmness in the air. "I've been thinking," Clayton said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but the weight of his words felt heavy. "About what you said, about the land, and how it's not just a place, but something more." Jolene glanced over at him, her expression unreadable. "You're finally listening," she said, her voice soft but tinged with something else. Approval, maybe. Takes most people a while to understand that. Clayton looked out at the ranch, the field stretching out before him. "I've been working hard, trying to make this place mine, trying to make something of it. But I can't shake the feeling that there's more I'm supposed to do here. Something I'm missing." Jolene's gaze softened, and for the first time, Clayton saw something more than the guarded woman he'd come to know. She was opening up, just a little. "There is more," she said quietly. "But you can't force it. The land, it doesn't work that way. It's like you said, you've been trying to make it yours. But in the end, Clayton, it's not about owning it. It's about understanding it and trusting it." Clayton turned to face her, surprised by the shift in her tone. She wasn't just the fierce, commanding woman he'd met on the porch. There was something softer underneath, something deeper. "You really believe that?" Clayton asked, the question almost slipping out before he could stop himself. He hadn't meant to sound vulnerable, but there it was. Jolene met his eyes and nodded. "I do. This place. It chose you. You might not understand why, but it's clear that you're meant to be here. We both are." Her words settled in his chest, the warmth in her gaze making something inside him shift. For the first time, he wasn't just a stranger on this land. He was starting to belong. Maybe not in the way he had imagined, but in a way that felt real. The ranch wasn't just a place to escape to. It was a place to grow, to find something that had been missing in his life. Clayton leaned back in his chair, the weight of the day lifting off his shoulders as he let the quiet settle between them. There was still so much about Jolene, about the land, that he didn't understand. But for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Jolene stood and stretched, her muscles rippling under her worn clothes. "You'll get it, Clayton. In time. The ranch is patient. It'll wait for you to catch up." Clayton smiled, a small but genuine smile, and watched her walk toward the cabin. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew one thing. He was no longer just a visitor here. This land, this life, was becoming his slowly, piece by piece. And with Jolene by his side, maybe he was starting to understand what it was all about. The days blended into one another, the hard work of the ranch becoming a rhythm Clayton could almost lose himself in. Every morning, the sun would rise, the sky a pale canvas, and he'd get to work. Jolene was a constant presence at his side, guiding him through tasks, challenging him to push harder, do better. There were moments when the silence between them felt natural, comfortable even. And in those moments, Clayton began to feel something he hadn't expected. Peace. The kind of peace that comes from purpose, from knowing that the sweat of your brow is shaping something real. But peace, as Clayton was learning, was fragile. It was late afternoon when the truck appeared. The sound of tires crunching against the dirt road was almost drowned out by the wind, but Clayton still heard it. He looked up from the barn where he had been repairing a fence, squinting toward the road. Jolene, who had been working on the other side of the field, stopped too, her posture stiffening as she saw the vehicle approaching. Clayton's first instinct was to keep working, to avoid whatever drama this visitor might bring. But Jolene's expression had changed. There was something unreadable in her gaze, a flash of wariness that made Clayton's heart skip a beat. The truck came to a slow stop in front of the cabin, its tires kicking up a cloud of dust. The engine cut off, and the silence that followed was thick with tension. Clayton watched as a man stepped out of the truck, his broad shoulders and gruff demeanor immediately putting him on edge. He wasn't sure why, but there was something about him that felt like a ghost from the past, a presence that didn't belong here. Jolene stood still for a moment, and then, without a word, began walking toward the truck. Clayton hesitated but followed, unable to ignore the strange pull of curiosity. As they reached the truck, the man turned, and Clayton could see his face clearly for the first time. He was older, graying at the temples, but the resemblance to Marcus Vance was unmistakable. Clayton's heart skipped a beat as he saw the recognition flash in Jolene's eyes. The man grinned, though it wasn't a friendly smile. "Well, if it isn't Jolene," he said, his voice low and gravelly, "I see the ranch is still standing. How's it been treating you?" Jolene's expression didn't soften. "What do you want, Jared?" Jared chuckled, the sound dry and cold. "I'm here because I heard the land's been sold, and I wanted to see who'd taken over. Didn't think it'd be someone like him." He nodded toward Clayton, his eyes scanning him up and down with clear disapproval. "Figured the place would be left to rot." Clayton felt a surge of defensiveness, but before he could speak, Jolene interrupted, her voice hard and final. "You don't belong here, Jared. Marcus is gone, and so are your deals. Whatever you think you're owed, you're not getting it." Jared's smile faded, but there was something in his eyes that made Clayton uneasy. "Oh, I'm not here for handouts, Jolene. Just came to see if the land's still as valuable as it once was. After all, Marcus had some interesting arrangements." He glanced at Clayton again, his eyes sharp. "You'd be wise to listen to the history of this place, boy. There's more to it than just the deed you've got." The warning in his voice was unmistakable. Clayton glanced at Jolene, who stood tall but stiff, her jaw set. "What kind of arrangements?" Clayton asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Jared's gaze flicked from Jolene to Clayton. "Well, let's just say that some promises Marcus made didn't vanish with him. People like me, people who have history with this land, expect certain things, and I'm not about to let a new owner waltz in and think they can take what's not theirs." Clayton felt the tension in the air grow thicker. He had no idea what Jared was talking about, but he could tell it wasn't good. Jolene stepped forward, her voice cutting through the quiet like a knife. "This land isn't yours to claim anymore, Jared. Marcus made his deals, and he's gone. Whatever you think you're entitled to, it ends here." Jared's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Clayton could see the anger flicker beneath the surface. But then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. He let out a low laugh, shaking his head. "Guess we'll see, won't we?" he muttered, turning to walk back to his truck. "But don't say I didn't warn you." As Jared drove off, the sound of his truck fading into the distance, Clayton was left standing there, his heart racing. What had just happened? And what was the connection between Jared, Marcus, and Jolene? It was clear that this wasn't just about land or property. There was something much darker beneath the surface. Jolene stood there for a long moment, watching the dust settle behind the truck. When she finally turned to Clayton, her face was unreadable. "Don't worry about him," she said, her voice tight. "But be prepared. The past has a way of catching up with you." The days following Jared's visit were filled with a quiet tension. Clayton couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that the ranch had become more than just a place to work. Jolene had been distant since their confrontation with Jared, her usual fire tempered by an unsettling silence. She continued to guide him through the work, but the air between them felt thicker now, more strained. Clayton tried to focus on the land, tried to push the nagging doubts aside, but the feeling of being watched, of something looming just beyond his reach, never left him. The more he worked, the more the ranch felt like a trap, its wide-open spaces somehow closing in on him. It was on the fourth day after Jared's visit that everything came to a head. Clayton had spent the day working in the barn, repairing a broken fence post, when Jolene appeared at the door. Her eyes were hard, her face drawn tight with something he couldn't quite read. "You're getting too comfortable," she said, her voice low but cutting through the quiet like a blade. Clayton wiped his hands on his jeans, turning to face her. "What do you mean?" Her gaze narrowed, her jaw clenched. "You've been here long enough to know there's more to this place than just the work. More than what I've told you, but you're still not asking the right questions." Clayton felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you want me to ask, Jolene? You've said everything you can. You keep talking about promises, about history. What is it you're hiding from me?" Jolene's face twisted in frustration, and she took a step closer, her presence overwhelming. "I'm not hiding anything. You just don't understand yet. And maybe I don't want you to." The words hit Clayton like a slap, but he didn't back down. "If you don't trust me, then why am I even here? Why not just let me go?" Jolene's eyes darkened, and for a moment, Clayton thought she might walk away. But instead, she stepped even closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Because this land is a part of me. It's been a part of me for a long time, and I'm not going to let anyone, not you, not Jared, not anyone take it from me. This ranch, this place, it's mine to protect. And if you're going to be here, you need to understand that." Clayton stared at her, trying to read the fire in her eyes. She wasn't just guarding the land. She was guarding something else, something deeper. But what? Protected from what? He asked, his voice steady but laced with the frustration he could no longer hold back. "What is this place really about, Jolene? What kind of promises are you talking about?" Her gaze softened for just a moment, a flash of vulnerability breaking through her hard exterior. Then, just as quickly, she hardened again, pulling back from him. "You don't understand. And maybe that's for the best. I don't want to drag you into something you're not ready for." Clayton felt his patience slipping, the tension between them too thick to ignore any longer. He stepped toward her, his voice sharp. "I've been working my ass off, trying to make this place work. I'm doing what you asked. But you keep holding back. You keep acting like I'm not part of this, like I don't deserve to be here. What do you really want from me?" Jolene's eyes flashed with something Clayton couldn't quite name. For a moment, he saw something in her face, something raw, something almost pleading. But it was gone before he could understand it. "I want you to understand that this isn't just about work," she said, her voice suddenly quiet, almost gentle. "It's about belonging. It's about survival. And when you're a part of this, there's no turning back. The land won't let you leave. It never has." Clayton felt a chill run through him, his heart pounding in his chest. There it was again, that feeling of being trapped, of being caught in something bigger than him, something that was slowly pulling him in. He took a step back, his breath coming faster now. "I didn't ask for this, Jolene. I just wanted a fresh start." Her gaze softened, and for the first time, Clayton saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. "I know. But sometimes, you don't get to choose. The land chooses you. And once it does, there's no going back." The silence between them stretched on, thick and suffocating. Clayton could feel the weight of her words, heavy in the air around them. He didn't know if he was ready for this. For whatever it was Jolene was asking him to understand. But as the day faded into night, one thing became clear. He was in too deep now. There was no turning back, and the ranch, with all its secrets and promises, had a hold on him. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling. Clayton had never been more certain that he was caught in something he didn't fully understand, something far beyond the simple act of working the land. The more he dug into the history of the ranch, the more it felt like the land itself was pushing back against him. Jolene's words echoed in his mind. "Once it chooses you, there's no going back." It was hard to shake the feeling that the past was always one step ahead of him, a shadow that loomed over every corner of the property. The more time he spent with Jolene, the more he realized that her walls ran deeper than he had imagined. She wasn't just protecting the land, she was protecting herself and whatever secrets it held. It was late one evening when everything finally came to a head. Clayton was in the barn, finishing up some last-minute repairs on a tool when he heard her footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, as though she knew exactly what she was about to say, and she wasn't going to back down. Jolene stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. The fading light from the outside painted her in shades of gold and shadow, making her look like a figure from a past life, someone who had seen too much, been through too much, to ever trust again. "You're still here," she said, her voice low but firm. It wasn't a question, but a statement, one that Clayton had heard before, but it felt different now. There was something final about it. "I'm still here," he replied, his voice steady despite the tension that seemed to crackle in the air between them. "But I don't understand why you're pushing me away, Jolene. You keep saying this is about survival, but I don't know what I'm surviving from, or for." Jolene's eyes softened for a moment, the cold mask she wore slipping just slightly. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "I didn't ask for any of this either, Clayton," she said quietly, her voice almost breaking. "This land, it's tied to me in ways you'll never understand. The promises Marcus made, they weren't just about land or ownership. They were about something much darker." Clayton felt a lump form in his throat, his mind racing with the possibilities. He had known there was more to the story, but hearing her admit it, it made everything feel more real. "What do you mean by that? What's really going on here?" Jolene glanced around the barn as if she were making sure no one else was listening. Then, she took a deep breath, as though steeling herself for what she was about to say. Marcus wasn't the first to make a deal with the land, she said, her voice barely a whisper. This place. It's been here long before either of us. The ranch was built on promises. Promises that go back generations. People who came before us, they made choices. And those choices, they have consequences. Clayton felt his pulse quicken, the unease from earlier now twisting into something deeper. What choices, Jolene? What do you mean? She closed her eyes for a moment, her face tightening as though she were recalling a painful memory. The land was never just about farming. It was about power. And there's a price to pay for that power. Clayton stepped back, his chest tightening with the weight of her words. What do you mean, a price? Are you saying the land demands something? Jolene's gaze hardened, and she took another step toward him. Yes, it demands loyalty. It demands sacrifice. And once you've made that deal, you're bound to it. Forever. The air in the barn seemed to grow colder, and Clayton could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was saying, but nothing fit. You're telling me this ranch, this land, controls people? She nodded slowly, her face a mixture of pain and resignation. It doesn't control you, Clayton, but it's always watching. It tests you. It waits for you to make the right choices, or the wrong ones. Clayton's head spun. He wanted to argue, to call her crazy, but the intensity in her eyes told him she wasn't lying. She had lived with this, fought with this truth for far longer than he could understand. I don't know if I can accept this, Clayton said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't come here for power or promises. I just wanted a fresh start. I know, Jolene said, her voice softer now, almost tender. But sometimes, a fresh start is just the beginning of something bigger. You can leave, Clayton, but the land won't let you forget. It will follow you, haunt you. Clayton stood still, his heart pounding in his chest. Jolene's words felt like a weight on his shoulders, suffocating him. Was she telling the truth? Was there really something sinister at play here? Something deeper than just a land transaction? The silence between them stretched on, thick and suffocating. Clayton didn't know what to do, what to say. He had come here looking for a fresh start, a place to rebuild himself. But now, everything was different. The land wasn't just a piece of property. It was a living thing, a thing that had a grip on everyone who dared to claim it. And no matter how hard he tried, Clayton knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going anywhere. The next few days passed in a haze of uncertainty. Clayton couldn't stop thinking about Jolene's words about the land, about the power it held over everyone who came to it. No matter how hard he tried to push them out of his mind, the questions only grew. The land was never just land. It had a deeper purpose, a dark purpose. And the more Clayton worked, the more he felt its pull, its presence. Jolene had withdrawn again, as if retreating into herself, leaving Clayton to navigate the ranch alone. There were no more conversations, no more quiet moments on the porch or shared tasks. It felt like the air had shifted, and with it, something had changed between them. But there was no turning back. Clayton couldn't leave. Not now. Not when he had come so far. On the morning of the 6th day, Jolene approached him again, her face serious, her eyes tired. She had been quiet for too long, and Clayton knew that whatever was coming next was inevitable. We need to talk, she said, her voice soft but resolute. Clayton looked up from his work, his heart pounding in his chest. What about? Jolene took a deep breath. Everything. She led him to the porch, the familiar creak of the boards beneath their feet the only sound between them. The air was thick with anticipation as she sat down, motioning for Clayton to join her. He did, unsure of what to expect, but bracing himself for the conversation that had been hanging in the air for days. Clayton, Jolene began, her voice steady but heavy. I've been thinking a lot about what we both want from this place. You came here looking for a fresh start, and I thought I could protect this land from the past. But I can't do it alone, and I don't want to anymore. Clayton's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Jolene looked at him, her expression softer now, almost vulnerable. This place, it's always been a part of me. But it's not just mine anymore. I'm not the only one tied to it, and I'm not the only one who can protect it. We've both been tested, and I think we've both passed. Clayton stared at her, unsure of what she was saying. Was she asking him to stay? To become a part of this place? For better or worse? I don't know what's coming, Clayton, Jolene continued, but I do know that we can face it together. We can't change what's been done, but we can build something new, something that's ours. Clayton felt a wave of emotion rise in his chest. He hadn't expected this, hadn't expected to hear her say it, to acknowledge the bond that had been forming between them, even if it had been messy and complicated. But now, it felt like they were standing on the edge of something bigger than just the ranch. "I'm not leaving," Clayton said, his voice low but firm. "This place, it's become a part of me too. And maybe I don't understand everything yet. Maybe I never will. But I'm here." Jolene smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face for the first time in days. "Good. Because I need you, Clayton. We need each other. This land, these promises, they're not just mine anymore. They're ours." As the wind rustled through the trees and the sun dipped low in the sky, Clayton realized that, for the first time since he arrived, he wasn't just a stranger on this land. He was part of it. He had made his choice, just as Jolene had made hers, and together, they were going to face whatever came next. The past might have been full of secrets and broken promises, but the future was still theirs to write. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team, as a family, and in that moment, with the land stretching out before them, Clayton finally understood. The ranch wasn't just a place to work, it was a place to belong, and in that belonging, he had found something he hadn't known he was searching for.